Welcome to our video. In the 5 weeks since Ukraine's unexpected attack on Russia's Kursk region, the situation has evolved significantly. Prior to August 6th, media narratives were dominated by pessimistic forecasts regarding Ukraine's future, reminiscent of the atmosphere in the final weeks of Joe Biden's presidential campaign, characterized by anxiety and despair. However, following the Kursk attack, media coverage shifted dramatically, reflecting a blend of cautious optimism and relief. These changes more accurately reflect the media's narrative evolution rather than any substantial shifts in reality. For Harris, this wave of relief obscured polling data indicating that the race for the White House remains exceedingly close. In Ukraine's context, the positive implications of the Kursk offensive threatened to overshadow the genuine and pressing threats in the Donbas region, now concentrated around Pokrovsk, a small town approximately 25 kilometers west of Avdiivka. Pokrovsk has emerged as the focal point of Russia's summer offensive. In recent weeks, Russian forces have made significant gains towards the city, capturing villages and breaching defenses. Several key settlements have surrendered with minimal resistance. When Novokhrihorivka fell in August, military analyst Emil Kastahelmi noted that Russia had taken the town of 14,000 in less than a week, an accomplishment that typically requires months, if not years. Nevertheless, the Kremlin has sustained considerable losses for these advances. On September 5th, the British Ministry of Defense estimated that Moscow incurred an average of 1,187 casualties or damages per day in August, marking it the bloodiest month of the war for Russia thus far. However, this effort allowed Russian forces to advance within 10 kilometers of Pokrovsk, reaching the primary line of defense safeguarding the town. This prompted a mass evacuation, as much of the city's pre-war population, estimated at 60,000, fled their homes. Those who remained were instructed to assist in digging trenches in anticipation of an impending assault. The Wall Street Journal noted that only one store remained operational, reflecting widespread anxiety within the local community regarding the imminent arrival of Russian troops. The timing of this offensive remains uncertain. The defenses outside Pokrovsk remain relatively robust, and recent days have witnessed a slowdown in the Russian advance. On X, the founder of the Insight Intelligence Analysis Group, known as Tatami, indicated that the situation around Pokrovsk remains volatile, yet Russian advances are being constrained. However, this does not imply that the threat has abated. Russian forces are likely concentrating on expanding their flanks before mounting a full-scale assault on the city. Other analysts have echoed this perspective, suggesting that the arrival of Ukrainian reinforcements from the Chasiv Yar area could be a crucial factor. While the pace of the Russian advance has decelerated, the Kremlin retains the capacity to devastate Pokrovsk, as it has done with other Ukrainian towns, employing artillery attacks followed by overwhelming airstrikes and infantry assaults. Should this scenario materialize, it would represent a significant setback for Ukraine, not solely due to Pokrovsk's size or strategic value, but because of its critical location. Positioned at the intersection of several key supply routes, Pokrovsk holds greater importance than its size would indicate. As Emil Kastahelmi has observed, the battle for Pokrovsk is likely to escalate into a broader crisis, with ramifications extending well beyond the city itself. To comprehend the current state of affairs in eastern Ukraine, it is essential to consider two pivotal pieces of infrastructure: roads and railways, many of which were established around a 19th century railway hub. Pokrovsk has historically been a vital point in the logistics chain that supplies troops from deep within Ukraine to the front lines in Donbas. Military historian Colonel Marcus Reiner has emphasized that Pokrovsk serves as the backbone of Ukraine's defense supply chain, linking Vuhledar in the south with the Donetsk region in the north. Equally significant are the roads traversing the city, particularly the Yanivka Road, which plays a central role in supplying troops engaged near Bakhmut and Kursk. Pokrovsk is not the sole logistics hub in the region. Kramatorsk, also holds significant importance. The loss of Pokrovsk would present a substantial challenge for Ukrainian forces, complicating their resupply operations along a vital route in Donbas. The consequences of such a loss could be severe. Military experts Michael Kaufman and Rob Lee have indicated that the fall of Pokrovsk might trigger a larger retreat from Kurakhove and Vuhledar. Analyst Pavlo Aros cautions that the most pressing threat could emerge from Chasiv Yar, a strategic town near Bakhmut that Russia has attempted to capture since 2023. Should Ukraine's logistics be disrupted, the likelihood of Chasiv Yar's fall increases, necessitating a retreat by Ukrainian forces due to supply shortages. Other experts share a pessimistic outlook. William Kingston Cox notes that the loss of Pokrovsk could force a large-scale Ukrainian withdrawal in the Donetsk region. While analysts differ on the extent of the impact from losing Pokrovsk, consensus exists that it would significantly diminish Kiev's position. If the city were to fall without substantial resistance, the ramifications could be dire, especially as the Donetsk Oblast border lies just 20 kilometers to the west with minimal fortification. A Russian offensive in this area would grant a propaganda advantage to Vladimir Putin. However, the likelihood of this scenario occurring remains low due to Pokrovsk's dense urban and industrial landscape, which presents challenges for Russian forces. Any attempt to capture the city would likely result in significant casualties for Moscow. Nevertheless, Russia does not need to conquer Pokrovsk to incapacitate it as a logistics hub. As Kaufman and Lee assert, bringing the city within artillery range has compelled the evacuation of its population, rendering it ineffective as a railway nexus. Despite the city's strong defenses and favorable terrain, Ukraine faces challenges in allocating sufficient manpower to sustain these defenses. The efficiency of any defensive posture is contingent upon proper staffing, and current limitations in resources, including artillery and troop shortages, have weakened its effectiveness. Current operations in Pokrovsk are interconnected with activities in the north, particularly in Russia. The Ukrainian offensive on Kursk on August 6th resulted in the seizure of over 1,000 square kilometers of Russian territory and the capture of more than 600 Russian soldiers. This operation provided Kiev with additional prisoners for exchange and inflicted substantial damage on Russian morale. More critically, it has undermined the Kremlin's narrative of success and weakened Putin's position as a leader. However, the Kursk operation has not come without costs. Ukraine has had to redeploy its most experienced troops from the Donetsk front line and call up additional reserves to ensure stability in crucial areas. This redistribution of forces has detracted from Ukraine's defenses in the Donetsk region. In May, a reserve army was mobilized to reinforce defenses around Kiev in response to a new Russian offensive. However, between Kiev and Kursk, Ukraine is grappling with a shortage of experienced reserves. The strategy behind the Kursk offensive, aimed at compelling Moscow to withdraw from the Donbas, has thus far achieved only partial success. According to Ukrainian military expert Hussein Alvi, in an interview with France 24, the Russian army has been engaged on 7 fronts in Donbas prior to initiating the attack on Kursk. Currently, their primary focus is on Pokrovsk. While the redeployment of Russian troops to Kursk has impeded progress on other fronts, the Kremlin recognizes Pokrovsk as its most significant strategic objective within reach. The Russian military leadership exhibits a reluctance to withdraw from the Pokrovsk operation, even to reinforce Kursk. As military analyst Ariel Castelli articulated on X, halting operations in Pokrovsk to shift troops to Kursk would be strategically unwise from Russia's perspective. Any territory gained in Donetsk holds greater strategic value than the potential loss in Kursk. This implies that the 1,000 square kilometers captured by Ukraine in August may not afford as much leverage as Kiev anticipated. An unnamed Russian source cited by Foreign Policy stated that while the Kursk offensive might enhance Ukraine's negotiating position in the future, a decisive victory is unlikely. Ukrainian forces may ultimately have to retreat from Kursk. However, Crimea and Donbas are territories Ukraine is unlikely to cede. The financial burden of maintaining a military presence in Kursk is excessive, particularly considering the substantial losses incurred on the Eastern Front. Ukraine's current strategy seems to emphasize optimizing territorial defenses and inflicting damage on Russian forces while allowing time for military rebuilding. Military analyst Michael Kaufman noted in early August that Russia is nearing its production limits for military equipment, thereby diminishing the likelihood of a significant breakthrough, which enables Ukraine to contain Moscow's ability to reinforce its forces. In this context, Ukraine might consider launching a large-scale offensive akin to the Kursk operation under more favorable conditions in 2025. However, this does not imply that the decision to initiate the Kursk operation was erroneous. With the upcoming US election, Ukraine may opt to consolidate and rebuild in 2024, potentially facing a new administration in Washington that could impose a ceasefire under unfavorable terms prior to any major offensive. The Kursk offensive entails both opportunities and risks for Ukraine. The current risk lies in maintaining control of Kursk at the expense of Pokrovsk. Nonetheless, this loss is not predetermined. Reinforcements from other regions could stabilize the situation, as demonstrated by the arrival of the 93rd Mechanized Brigade from Chasiv Yar. Military strategist Mykola Bielieskov suggests that additional forces might be redeployed from Kiev and Kursk to fortify the defensive line. However, this could inadvertently disadvantage Ukraine. According to Foreign Affairs, following the Russian offensive in May, the Ukrainian army faced challenges with dispersed defenses across the Donetsk region. Mobilizing troops into Pokrovsk could compromise other strategic locations, such as Vuhledar or Chasiv Yar. While Ukraine may sustain its defensive front, including newly captured territory in Kursk, each redeployment complicates the situation on other fronts. Despite existing challenges, there is a prevailing optimism that the Kremlin may not be as indifferent to the situation in Kursk as it seems. Mikhailo Samus, Director of International Affairs at the Center for Transformation and Disarmament Studies in Ukraine, indicated to Deutsche Welle that Russia is fully committed to securing Pokrovsk to achieve a significant propaganda victory. Their objective is to capture Bakhmut and celebrate it as a major triumph, subsequently reallocating reinforcements to the Kursk region. If Samus's assessment holds true, Ukraine's robust defense of Pokrovsk could compel Moscow to reassess its strategy and redeploy troops back to Kursk. Furthermore, Ukraine is not the sole party contending with risks and opportunities. The fall of Pokrovsk would not necessarily equate to a decisive defeat for Kiev. The prevailing strategy aims to stabilize and exhaust Russian forces, potentially delaying or undermining the Kremlin's offensive plans for 2024. Military analyst Mikhailo Podolyak remarked that should Russia deplete its resources in efforts to capture Pokrovsk, it may find itself lacking the necessary capacity and morale to advance further into Ukraine. As Moscow redeploys troops from various regions, it currently lacks a substantial operational reserve in the south. This presents a potential opportunity for Ukraine, contingent on its ability to mobilize additional troops to inflict considerable damage on Russian forces near Kursk and other critical locations. However, this situation remains unresolved and uncertain regarding its timing and feasibility. More broadly, there is ambiguity surrounding whether Ukraine possesses a coherent military strategy. While advancing in areas such as Kursk and defending others like Donbas, Ukraine is also exerting pressure on Crimea through strikes on Russian infrastructure, including oil refineries in the Rostov region. From an external perspective, it appears that Ukraine's primary strategy is to consistently showcase the vulnerability of the Russian military, illustrating its fallibility on the propaganda front, and to enhance its leverage at the negotiating table. To unify and consolidate this strategy, Ukraine requires an extensive array of equipment, particularly ammunition, air defense systems, and interceptor missiles. Sustaining current operations long enough to mobilize additional forces is crucial, a process already underway. Ukraine is increasing the number of troops in training due to adjustments in the mobilization law, although this poses a significant political challenge for President Zelensky, as broad support for mobilization has yet to develop. Nevertheless, Zelensky has asserted that a general mobilization is inevitable, emphasizing that Ukraine is engaged in a fight for its survival. If Ukraine can maintain its position, the balance of power would likely shift in its favor, at least in terms of troop numbers. If the current campaign is unsuccessful, they can maintain their position for an extended period without significant repercussions from Putin, such as nuclear escalation, for several reasons. As discussed in previous videos, it is essential to note that Putin appears to be confronting numerous internal challenges, politically and militarily. The use of nuclear weapons would elicit a strong response from the international community and undermine Russia's diplomatic standing. Additionally, the Russian military struggles to sustain operational effectiveness in occupied regions, making any escalation move potentially unpredictable for the Putin regime. With mounting pressure from the West, particularly due to economic sanctions that are constricting national resources, the likelihood of Putin opting for nuclear escalation diminishes. In this context, Russia's ongoing efforts to maintain its military posture without taking drastic measures may indicate a current strategic stalemate. Putin's rhetoric has increasingly become hollow and contentious among the Russian public and within the Kremlin. He asserts that 5 regions in Ukraine, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, and Crimea, are Russian territory. The Russian president also equates the conflict in Kiev to a 6th sovereign region, as he considers all these areas integral parts of Russia. This argument may resonate with someone with imperial ambitions, as Putin contends that his assertions affirm Russia's ownership. However, it remains uncertain whether this sentiment is shared by the Russian populace or leadership. Clear distinctions are made between regions like Luhansk, Donetsk, Crimea, and Kiev. Moreover, the symbolic importance of Kursk, particularly regarding its role in World War II's national memory, differentiates it from regions like Zaporizhia. This awareness of regional distinctions is prevalent among the Russian people. As winter approaches, both sides are striving for strategic advantages. Ukraine faces a severe winter anticipated to begin in late October or early November. As temperatures drop and humidity rises, large-scale offensive operations may become challenging, though not impossible. Consequently, both Ukraine and Russia are attempting to optimize their tactical positions before winter conditions impose additional challenges on the battlefield. As the conflict endures, balancing the retention of newly captured territory while defending crucial strategic locations such as Pokrovsk presents a significant challenge for Ukraine. Kiev's defense relies not solely on military strength, but also on the support of the international community, especially Western nations. Stay informed as the situation evolves in this conflict, which remains highly uncertain. Please subscribe to the channel and enable notifications to avoid missing updates on the Russia-Ukraine war. We appreciate your engagement through likes, shares, and comments. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in future videos.